Boris Johnson says the government has increasing confidence that current vaccines are effective against all coronavirus variants. It's after scientists warned the Prime Minister that a surge in vaccinations in COVID hotspots may not be enough to stop the spread of the Indian mutation. But let's look at the data now. We can speak to Duncan Robertson, Policy and Strategy Analytics at Loughborough University's School of Business and Economics and Fellow St Catherine's College, Oxford. Duncan Robertson, thanks very much indeed for being with us. It was all looking pretty good as case numbers started to fall as a result of a combination of both lockdown and the vaccines. Then the Indian variant arrived. What does the data show us about where we're headed?
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment, but what we do know is that this B.1.617.2, the so-called Indian variant, is starting to outcompete the existing very transmissible Kent variant that we all know about. So we're starting to see, if you look at the growth of the orange line at the bottom, that's the India variant, and the Kent variant is sort of decreasing. So we've got this sort of battle where one is decreasing and the other one is increasing. And this is data from the Wellcome Sanger Institute, which removes travellers, people who've travelled, and also surge testing. So it's a good reflection of what's actually happening in the community.
The government characterises this as a race between the vaccines and the variant. Are we able to see from the data how effective the vaccines are at protecting people and the role that vaccine hesitancy might play?
Well, one great thing is we're not seeing so many older people go into hospital, and that's really, I think, the centre of the strategy that the government has. Is that to a certain extent, once you release restrictions, you're going to get more increased transmission. But coupled against that, you don't want older people to end up in hospital. And so we're seeing that, and once again, a tremendous success of the vaccine programme. But there are a couple of caveats. It's not 100% of older people who've been vaccinated. And particularly, younger people aren't very vaccinated at all. You will have some, of course. So it's not as though the kind of problem has been solved. There is still a very significant number of people who haven't been vaccinated in the UK. So it's about half have been vaccinated, half haven't been vaccinated, if you include children in that mix. And the other thing is it's not really equally spread across the country. So this chart is from Colin Angus of Sheffield University and really shows the disparity in where people have been vaccinated. And this, I think, is going to be the story going forward, is we can't really look at the country as a whole anymore. We can to a certain extent, but the stories are going to be in certain areas. So you can sort of think about where that is likely to be. It's likely to be in places where there have been unvaccinated people. So that's the young people, as we just mentioned. Most, a significant number haven't been vaccinated. But it's going to be in places where you have higher levels of deprivation, maybe ethnicity, inner cities. And they're going to be the regions where you potentially are going to see a high level of transmission.
And with those that haven't been vaccinated, particularly those who are in the lower range of the 30s and below, children, of course, is that being reflected then in the cases that are being detected now, Duncan?
Well, we are still seeing, numbers of cases in the sort of children, 5 to 19. So if you look at the chart for that, you can still see that sort of third line from the bottom, still seeing that starting to increase. And, there are reasons for that. One is there's been more testing. There's been the lateral flow testing. But I think we are going to see transmission happening in people that haven't been vaccinated. And one of those key determinants are going to be younger people who are mixing it and also potentially their parents. So we're starting to see in some areas the sort of children plus their parents type ages who are starting to increase. But hopefully these are the people who are much less likely to end up in hospital and to have bad effects from COVID.
We know that the Kent variant was more transmissible than the original strain of coronavirus. Now warnings about the transmissibility of this Indian variant. What could that equate to? Modelling now underway. Of course, we're forecasting this. We don't know exactly, but what are the fears?
Well, you're absolutely right to say that. With all these projections, they are looking at ranges of what could happen, not what is going to happen. And the work from Warwick University is really showing it's all down to this extra level of transmissibility. I think we're very confident now that it is increased transmissibility, but how much more transmissible? And that's the real question that scientists are trying to work out. There has been a suggestion it may be 40 to 50% more transmissible, but the work is going on now. So if you look at these charts, they're basically showing what could happen up to 50% more transmissibility. And if it's 50% more transmissible, we're going to have a problem. Potentially a more severe problem than we did in the first peak and in the second peak, and that's really quite bad for the roadmap. And as you go down in that transmissibility, it becomes more and more easy to control. So what we hope is that transmissibility isn't quite as bad as we had feared, and lots of work is going on to try and ascertain that figure.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister suggested yesterday that in the next few days we'll know more about this. What specifically in the data will the government be looking at in order to make its decision on that next phase?
Well, the most significant thing is how much more transmissible it is, and that's quite difficult to work out because we have an introduction from people who perhaps have travelled, so it's not equally split around the country. Plus, we've also done the extra thing of going forward to step 3 and actually increasing transmission as a result of that. So it's going to be quite difficult to decouple those different effects. But we're going to be looking at hospitalizations, how sick people are, where it's spreading. And these things are just that little bit more difficult because we've added more transmission into that mix.
Dr. Duncan Robertson, thanks very much indeed for talking us through the latest data.
Thank you.